Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Insert theme music here. Insert theme music here. All right. Good evening and welcome to Merriwether's World. I am your host, Dr. Mark Merriwether Vorderbergen, broadcasting to you live from a place lost in the woods. But that's okay because we got a search team looking for me. I don't think I'm going to be very hard to find, though. I'm very loud and somewhat annoying. So if you don't know me, like I said, my name is Dr. Mark Merriwether Vorderbergen, PhD chemist, and also herbalist for Medicine Man Plant Co., author of Idiot's Guide Foraging, creator of the foragingtexas.com, and I am trying to juggle multiple things here. There we go. Links are always good for you. And tonight we have special guests, Alpha Search and Recovery. But where we get into them, got to say a word to some sponsors here. So let me just kick that back over here. But hello, they're all muted, but you get to see them ahead of time. So, of course, Medicine Man Plant Co., that is my real job. So if you are looking for ancient plants for modern issues, this is the place you go. And we have a number of things. We have actually 5 things now. So not just what's shown, but even stuff that isn't shown. And then, of course, I have to do a shout out to Wazoo Survival because they are the ones that have paid for the StreamYard account. And so if you're looking for, gear to get you home, so don't need Alpha Search and Rescue Recovery, then definitely you want to check out the Wazoo stuff, all sorts of really cool gear for the people who do interesting things in interesting places. So check them out. And like I said, keep in mind that they help pay my bills. So, they're awesome people to begin with, but also that. All right. And then one other, hey, Uncommon Bees is here. You'll be, we'll put you up on the second break there. But where'd the Arbor True go? There it is. Okay. With the recent winter storm, your yard may be looking like it's having problems, especially your trees. And definitely wait at least 2 or 3 weeks before you do anything. Just let them recover. Don't be pruning or anything like that. But if it really looks like you have trees that need to be removed, give Arbor True a call. They will come out. If you have some sort of infection maybe that's going in their trees, they are one of the few actual true tree doctors that can help treat tree diseases. Okay, so enough of the sponsors. And like I said, Uncommon Bees will be talking to you in a bit, but I need to get my mouse over here and do this. And whoa, okay, there we got people. Let's see here. If we can, I'm trying to squeeze 3 in. And just to make it even more interesting, let's do this, but I really need to unmute. So, all right, and unmute. So tonight with us, we have several of the members of the Alpha Search and Recovery. This is a Houston-based canine search team. And so we have Kristin Blackman. She is the wave to the people, Kristin. She is the president and CEO of Alpha Search Recovery. And then her husband, Nick, will be with us. He's also a member. And Aaron is like the mapping GIS goddess of the group and make sure that the searchers don't get lost, as far as I can tell. So cool. Do we want to jump into the slide deck, or do you want to say a few other words? Or I know a lot of it will be in the slide deck. So how do you want to do it?
However, we can go either way.
Okay. Well, let's just jump right into this because we have slides here, but then after the slides come other cool stuff with them. So let's start with the slides. So like I said, Alpha Search and Recovery. Oops, I got to go down to here. So the people we have with us tonight, like I said, Kristin, she is the president, 12 years search and rescue, and I'm going to let you talk about the rest there.
All right. So yeah, we've been doing, both my husband and I have been doing search and rescue for 12 years. I currently I'm on my 2nd dog and my 3rd dog, and they're both dual purpose dogs. They do trailing and human remains detections. I have a whole bunch of certifications. I've done a lot of things with the National Association for Search and Rescue and FEMA and a bunch of different certifications out there. But I don't know. That's all I got. Hey, Nick?
Yeah, I can go next. Same time in search and rescue. We kind of got into it when we moved down to Houston because we both grew up in West Virginia, or I guess met in West Virginia in college. So we spent a lot of time in the woods hiking and whatnot. So looked for a reason to get outdoors when we got down to Houston and kind of stumbled into search and rescue. And it's been somewhat of a obsession ever since. But yeah, same thing. I work. We both train the dogs that we have so that depending on the handler and the day that's available or required, we can kind of trade off as needed. And it works well in that aspect. I have one other dog, Rocket, that is retired. He was my first dog that I trained, and then now currently training both Havoc and Drax in human remains. Aaron?
Oh, well, my name is Aaron, and I'm the GIS person on the team, so I handle the mapping component. And also, I'm currently my current dog, Marshall. I'm training him in human remains detection. I got started about 9 years ago with my first dog, Maverick, who's retired, living the good life on the couch.
Nice. Cool. Okay,
And-
so let's.
I was just going to say, and as you said, we're all volunteers, so we all have day jobs, and figured I'd throw that out there. I'm a rocket scientist by day and a dog trainer, search and rescue professional at night. And Nick
She's
is
serious. She is a NASA engineer.
Mm-hmm.
and Nick's the one of the owners of Wazoo Survival Gear, and Erin does mapping for a living, so that's why she's our mapping goddess, is because that's what she does on a day-to-day basis.
Cool. And so looking at the group here, there's about 12 people. That's the current size right now.
No, this is just who showed up for picture day.
Ah.
We had a professional photographer come out.
Yeah, I don't think I'm even in there.
Yeah, Nick's
No, you're not.
not in there. We operate we have 15 operational members and about 20 kind of in training, or 20 total, including some that are in training right now.
Cool. All right, let me move on to let's see. So, okay. So why don't you walk through, your mission statement and just what you're trying to do? And
yeah, so in general, our team is all volunteers. We respond at the call of any law enforcement agency or agency that has jurisdiction over a search. In the state of Texas, that can be the sheriff, but it can also be individual cities. So whoever's responsible for a search will call us. And our mission is to provide highly trained and coordinated response to any call out. So we have team members that are trained in everything from search tactics, GPS, nav, communications, the incident command system, which is organized by FEMA, used a lot in fire and emergency response. So our team is just a cohesive team trained in all of these things. And we respond at any request for free for any kind of missing persons, as well as sometimes we assist law enforcement with homicides and things like that too.
Eek. Okay. And then, so it's not just people with dogs. You have a whole bunch of support stuff to support the people with dogs, it seems.
Yeah, every time we run a dog in the field, we like to have a minimum of 2 to 3 additional people besides the canine handler. They can help with comm, safety, mapping, making sure we know where we are, as well as just generally looking for clues. So we run, even though we may be running one dog, we have other handlers or other flankers that run with us. And then on top of that, we also have been trying to ramp up our drone capability, because it's one of the best capabilities at locating people too. So we also have that as something else in our arsenal.
Okay. And so then, Aaron, you would be kind of keeping track of where people have searched and what areas they haven't and so forth in this, on the communications and the mapping side?
Yes and no. It really depends on how big big or small the scale of the operations are, and how it fits. The mapping component fits into ICS is a little bit weird. So we work with operations and planning. And so if it's just AlphaSAR and it's a one-man IC trailer, then I may be running the comms and the mapping and handing out assignments. But if we're working with other teams they're running IC and I'm just a GIS person, then I could just be the person who is collecting tracks. If people come back in the field, they come over, hand their GPS, I upload the tracks, and then kind of mark on the map that search area has been finished or needs to be redone or, whatever, and then information goes up the scale. So it all depends on how big the search operations are.
Okay,
So
She's being pretty humble about it too. She's got some skills that essentially anytime we get a search call, she has to find the location, find the areas that we're going to search, break them down into manageable sections, and more often than not, we end up with these really nice laid out plots of you get search area A, you get search area B, you get search area C, and they're all appropriately sized, and it's also based off of tons of search and rescue data that shows based on the type of missing person that it is, whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's dementia, I guess those are kind of the same, autistic or despondence, based on who it is that's missing. There's data that shows typically they're found like 90% of the time in this range or 50% of the time in this range and further out. So she uses all of that plus her mapping experience and plots, where to search, most high likelihoods. And so it's a whole overall search theory that goes into before we even get out in the field.
So really the science of missing people,
Yes.
where are they, and I assume terrain, people will have a tendency to head downhill rather than uphill and things like that.
If there's hills.
Yeah, well, okay.
In Houston,
Or
we
other
have
than
different
Houston.
years.
Overpasses, but there quite literally is an app for that.
Wow.
And I pulled the app up.
Okay. I got to ask that.
Yeah,
It looks like y'all are holding a rocket here. So you
Oh,
also
yeah,
have like warfare capabilities? Or?
No, so part of our mission statement is outreach. So it's doing stuff like this, like, going out in the public. So you can see down, I think that's me and my dog Maverick with Duchess under the tent. We're at a PR event. So it's going out in the public, teaching the public, doing, things like this. But one of the biggest things we do every year is an event called Rockets. And it's with another nonprofit called Systems Go. And what they do is they're plugged into the STEM classes, STEAM, or we call them STEM classes in the high schools. And the high school students actually learn rocket, like the history of rockets and rocket design. Then they build their own rocket, and then they actually get to launch it. But they're children. So there's adult volunteers that actually do it. And they have 4 or 5 launch sites every year in the spring. And so we basically, AlphaSAR runs the recovery efforts at the Southeast Texas launch site.
Cool.
And actually my computer base, that was that's our computer at Mission Control.
Oh.
So the lingo changes because we have to remember to call it Mission Control, not Incident Command.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think one way to look at it is that we are search specialists, and we have a lot of training and tools at our disposal, and the canines are kind of our preferred because of their abilities, but we still have tons and tons of other search techniques and information that goes into it. So the rockets is a really fun thing for us because it lets us practice our mapping skills and field navigation. Because essentially as a rocket comes down, we get to sight it with a compass, they plot the point on the map, and then we have to deploy teams to that area to see if they can then search and find it in person. So it uses a lot of our actual skills, but at the same time, the students, if they don't recover their rocket, they don't get the data off of it, and then they can't complete their project. So there's kind of really high stakes for them, and that's why they enjoy calling us in, is because we have a significantly higher recovery rate.
Okay. And I know you don't, but I'm imagining the payload of milk-bone dog biscuits or something.
We actually don't use the dogs for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just go out there on our own.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
It's fun
so
weekend.
the map here. So this is 2012 to 2020. And I know it's like, whoops, quite a few around. And okay, recovery, search, fire. Interesting. Fire. What do you do with fire?
So we get called in if there's a known fatality after a fire and the firefighters haven't located the body, or if there's a suspected fatality where they think there might have been still someone inside. Things that you don't really realize is that after a large fire, like a structure fire of an apartment or something, we are in Houston, they try to contact somebody from every apartment. And if they can't get a hold of an apartment or something, they suspect that there might be somebody out there that they just, they call us.
Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I hadn't thought about that. But, okay. So now the dogs.
Oh, I think there was another
Was there one
past
more?
the map.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a little
Yep,
weird.
there was.
I know.
The map always throws me off. Okay.
Sorry.
What can you do? Yeah, it's a very important slide here.
Yeah. That's all right.
Yeah, so ways that you could help if you wanted to help Alpha Search and Recovery, or if you're located somewhere outside of Houston, there are search and rescue all across the United States. But one of the things that we'll get into later is take home some key points about what to do, how to not get lost, what to do if you are lost, and make sure your kids and family members are aware of these things. It just helps search and rescue personnel if you can take home some of those key points. If you're really interested in actually becoming a search and rescue volunteer, you could come out and volunteer. You don't have to necessarily join the team. You could volunteer to hide from the dogs. We're always looking for new people, new scents and new things to come out and hide from the dogs. So we can always use those volunteers. And then if you have the time and energy to join a search and rescue team, that is one of those options that you have is going out and joining. It takes a lot of effort. We train, Alpha Search and Recovery trains twice a week as a team. In addition to training our canines at home on our own. So we invest a lot of time. And it's not cheap either. We buy all of our own gear. We have to buy all of the gear for the dogs. So a lot of that, cost kind of exists there too. And then that kind of leads into the last thing is donating. If you don't want to join a team and don't have the time to volunteer, you could always donate to us or to another local team in your area, and that always helps pay for things. It pays for some of the team equipment. It pays for certifications. Various teams have different requirements, but we utilize funding to just pay directly for bringing back to the community by updating our equipment and making sure we have the best resource available.
And like you said, your services are free of charge. No one ever gets a bill after you found their missing person. So
Correct.
Yep.
Maybe a hug.
A hug. They'll bring you a hot dish if you were, up in Minnesota, I guess.
Yeah. No tips for recovering rockets either.
Just the joy of being part of it. Cool. Okay, so search and rescue canines. Now, one thing that I always thought when I thought about rescue dogs is like they were a few specific breeds that were trained as rescue dogs, but working with you all, it's not the case, is it?
No, especially not on our team. We have a large variety of breeds and mixed breed dogs. And yeah, if you go on to the next one, I guess they're in a different order.
Yeah, here we go.
So we'll talk about the breed or what we look for in a search dog coming up. But just starting here, we run 3 types of canines in search and rescue. We have the human remains detection dogs. That's the fancy term we use. We actually don't really call them cadaver dogs anymore. But to the general public, we typically say cadaver dogs because that's what people associate with.
Yeah.
But the human remains detection dogs are trained on only human remains. They are not trained on animal. In fact, we utilize animal remains to proof our dogs off of. We live in hog country down here in Texas, and so we have to proof our dogs off of deceased hogs and things like that, so that they're only on human
don't go
remains.
after the hog. All right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's what proofing is essentially you're trying to send the dog into an odor that they shouldn't hit on, and proofing is doing that test to see whether or not they indicate on something like hog remains. And so the goal would be that you can send them in to check a dead animal, they sniff it, they move on, and they ignore it.
Gotcha. Okay. So then trailing.
Yeah, so trailing is what a lot of people think of with bloodhounds, right? You give them the scent article of a missing person, and they follow the trail of that person. But we actually know that more dogs can do it besides bloodhounds, and in fact, most of our team dogs happen to be various breeds. My current dog is a Dutch Shepherd, but we have German Shepherds and mixed breeds. The dog pictured there is a German Shepherd Husky mix.
And then some cute little, it almost looked like a poodle at first when I saw the.
That is a
It is
poodle.
a poodle.
It is a poodle. Eh.
That is a poodle.
Okay, I've never thought of poodles as search and rescue dogs.
Yep, that is Judith, the poodle. So yeah, we also have the area/air scent dogs, and what these dogs do versus the trailing dogs is they are searching an area. We have a bug next to them trying to catch. It's very distracting. It's like hovering right above the camera. So the air scent dogs, they search any given area for a person in it. So they're typically utilized when you have large areas, 40 plus acres. They will locate any live human being in there. Sometimes they're cross-trained with human remains, but they'll locate any person that's in that area. And so they're not following a scent track like the trailing dogs are. They're just out there searching. And we haven't, because we're in Houston, we don't have a lot of area search dogs because most of our call outs are for trailing or human remains. So Judith is one of the few poodles who's been on the team in the past. She was previously certified, but she's no longer current.
Yeah, you could see the use for those definitely out west a lot more in large wilderness areas, big open spaces. They can cover hundreds of acres trying to find any person that's in that area. And typically down here, if there is an area, even in the national forest, you're likely to find multiple people out there. Yeah. So the trailing dogs are really our bread and butter in a sense that those are kind of the, Navy SEALs almost. Because you can, if you have the person's vehicle and a scent article from them, we can even collect a scent article from the vehicle to give them something to start from, and then they can follow that specific person wherever they went. So that's a huge thing for us. If you imagine getting to a search where even if you know where the person's vehicle is, your search area is a 360-degree circle around that.
Good point.
If we can get a trailing dog in there and the dog takes a trail in a certain direction, and suddenly we've narrowed that entire circle down to more of a pie wedge shape in that direction. And now we increase our likelihood of finding them if we can concentrate our efforts in that direction.
That makes sense. Okay, so what to look for in a search dog?
Yeah, so like we talked before, we have a variety of breeds, and you can see here on the left is a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, and on the right is little Rocket Dog, who is a mutt. He's half Jack Russell, a quarter poodle, and a quarter super mutt. And so what we look for is that the dog has the drive to do it. We look for nerve strength, and nerve strength really means that they're stable, that they hear a loud sound and they don't cower or run away, that they want to go in and engage and keep going as long as they're getting their reward. And then the drive part is that reward system. We're looking for a dog who will do anything for a ball or a tug or something, a toy.
A frisbee.
A frisbee in Aaron's dog's case. And so that's what we're looking for in dogs. And then, we said non-aggressive, but we need a very stable dog. We need a dog who's not going to go try to start another fight with another dog on a search, or is going to not like other people being around. And often, when we're working fire scenes or when we're working with law enforcement, there's a lot of people around. So you have to have a dog that's fairly socially stable.
Okay. So is this something you have to start them out training as a puppy, or is there like a window like up to 3 years old when you suddenly realize, hey, this dog has the nerve, strength, drive, and non-aggressiveness? I mean, I guess if you're looking for a new dog, how do you go about it?
So our ideal age is to start between 9 months and 2 years is really like the golden window.
Wow.
Young puppies are really tough because it's hard to tell genetically how they're going to come out until they mature a little bit.
Right.
And around 9 months, dogs start reaching sexual maturity, and so they kind of their desires and things start leveling out. And so that's really the golden age. That doesn't mean we don't start young puppies. In fact, we have a little Belgian Malinois puppy now, and it's fun playing those puppy games with them. But we won't actually fully accept the dog onto the team until he reaches 9 months old, and we can see drives and where that goes.
Okay. Cool. All right. So lost information. I like this part. So how not to become a search and rescue mission.
Yeah. So the big one is to always have a plan. Have a plan of where you're going and tell someone about it. So don't just go out on a hike and not tell anyone where you're going. Don't go out foraging and not let anyone know where you're wandering around.
This is my wife actually requires that I leave her a Google map with the mark where my car is parked, where I expect I will be camping, the time when I should call her, and the time when she should call for help. So,
Perfect.
That is perfect.
Yes,
that is exactly what you should have.
Yeah, I didn't put it, I ran out of space, but that was the next part, was not just tell someone, but also make sure that you let them know, like, you should expect to hear from me about this time.
Yep.
If not, send in the cadaver dog.
She
He's
worries
not that
about me
extreme.
because I don't always make the smartest choice when I'm doing certain things.
Yeah, but that is really the most important thing, is having that plan. We've had quite a few calls where somebody drove away and they didn't know, and then they found their car weeks later, right? And it's very difficult to mount a rescue style mission at that point. So making sure that somebody knows where you're going and when you should be back is definitely key. The next one is having appropriate clothing and footwear. So often search and rescue missions, not so much for us, but out west on hiking and things like that, a lot of search and rescue ends up being because people are wearing flip-flops out hiking, national parks and things like that. So wear adequate footwear. Don't wear flip-flops. Wear, something appropriate for the terrain you're in. And same way with your clothing. Have layers. Have options so that whenever you're out there, you're not just stranded without the right gear.
Yeah, because I think you can even get hypothermic in 60 degrees if you're wet, and that's one of those things that emergency poncho folds up like this big, and you can throw it in your pack, and it's just one of those things that you shouldn't go without, because if you get lost, typically the instinct is to wander around because it's just around the turn or it's just around that next bend, and then before you know it, the sun is setting and now you're going to have to overnight. And if you got wet during the day, or if it's supposed to rain that night, then you could certainly end up a statistic more so than you want to.
Yeah. And then, okay. And of course, talk with your family. So, oops. And I guess it's not all. But,
It's just because the year lost is scroll down a little bit.
Okay, there we
go.
Go the other way. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
This is kind of like what we talk to people about, to talk to their kids about. These are more like what you would talk to your family, less about you going hiking, but for small kids.
And Aaron, did you say we're going to make these slides available for other people to see after?
Yeah. Yes, it's a public link, so
Cool.
people we can figure out how to send them out.
Yeah, so
Well,
I can share it with the.
Yeah, the four big ones are stay put, have a safe word, don't hide, and respond when your name's called. So usually for kids, like find somewhere you can sit, a picnic table, a bench, the top of the slide, playground,
Hug a tree.
somewhere you're hug a tree. Yeah, I mean, just stay where you're at, because if you're wandering around looking for your parents, if they're wandering around looking for their parents, and you're wandering around looking for them, then y'all are both wandering around. Someone else is getting lost, and now the search team's getting called. So,
Yeah.
and then also having a safe word, because a lot of times we teach our kids, stranger danger, and they're not going to answer when somebody's calling Timmy, but if you have a safe word, then that, as long as that's communicated to law enforcement and the searchers, and the kid knows that person is safe to go with. Also, a lot of times kids will hide because they think they're going to get in trouble, and or they don't know the person. They may, again, stranger danger. So, staying where you're at, find a visible space where someone can find you, and then respond when their name is called. If they, if it's possible. I mean, some kids, that depending on their circumstances, may not, but respond when their name is called, or their nickname, or whatever their code word is. Those are the big four that we talk about all the time with families with their kids.
Yeah, I think the biggest one of those is even just having that discussion as a family. Like, tell your kids about search and rescue, that if you ever get lost, you might be scared, whatever, but there are good people looking for you. And so introduce them to the idea of search and rescue and the concept of it, so that they aren't, they're already scared and probably cold and lost and whatever. So yeah, a stranger added into that then becomes something to hide from or something to avoid, and that's makes our job even harder. So having that discussion really helps open the window.
That makes a lot of sense. And we always had a code word with our kids that only go with a person if they give you. I'm not going to give you the word, but
Cactus.
Yeah. Our code word from when we were little now has turned into a code word for my sister. If she's watching this, she's going to kill me. But it's like hey, you need to cool your jets. So I say the code word now is different. It's the same code word, though, but it's funny.
Cool. Okay. So then, if you personally are lost.
Yeah. So the big thing is like we said, is to just stay in place. If you've put that plan into place of somebody will be looking for you at a certain amount of time, and they know where your car is and where you were going, then just stay put. There's no reason to try to just wander. A lot of times, the more you wander, the further away you're going to get. And so you just start wandering and meandering further and further, just making our search area bigger. And if you just stay in place and have everything set up, then help is on the way. The other thing is to use tools to help get yourself found. So a lot of times search and rescue utilizes helicopters and drones. So making sure that you're not directly under canopy. If the sky is clear and it's nice and you're not needing shade or cover for any reason, then you should be out of the cover as much as possible, or nearby. If you have an extra jacket or your backpack, if you're needing to be under the shade because it's hot, you can put something out that's bright, that's not under the canopy cover, that a helicopter or something passing by would be able to see. And so those kind of tips are really important, because that would help. A lot of times while we are running dogs on our team, a helicopter tends to be a lot faster than the dogs. Helicopters and drones tend to actually make more recoveries than the canines, because the canines have to start from where you left off and work their way in, whereas a helicopter can cover a lot of area all at once.
That makes sense. Okay.
Also, don't ever forget your whistle.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Having a whistle is great. Sitting there yelling, you're going to lose your voice. So you don't want to just continuously yell either. If you are lost, ideally you would wait until you hear something and try to yell back, try to call back.
But yeah, with the whistle, 3 blasts and then wait, 3 blasts and then wait. It carries a lot farther. Yeah, I actually, because I'm somewhat paranoid, I carry 2 whistles with me because I'm under the theory that 1 is 0 and 2 is 1. So something is going to break when I'm out in the woods. But generally, I want to get home. So yeah, whistle is with me. Okay, there's no one to self-rescue. That's an interesting statement coming from a search and rescue team. So
yeah, and it's one of those difficult topics. You know, we tend to say staying put is the most important. You can survive for a long time without water or food, but at some point there hits a time when it is time to just pick up and start moving on. And we put this in here. There's a big search and rescue case that from 4 years ago now of an Appalachian Trail hiker. Jerry Largay was her name. And she stepped off the trail to go to the bathroom. And she had a plan. She was going to meet her husband. She had everything in place that was correct. And she stepped off the trail and got lost. And they mounted a large-scale search and rescue effort. This was up in Maine. It was a very large-scale effort. They had dog teams. They had helicopters. They knew where she last was. They knew what section of the trail she should have appeared on. And they just couldn't find her. And very unfortunately, they located her body 2 years later after this large effort. They spent about 10 days searching for her. And when they located her body, she had a journal, and on the first page of the journal was titled, "When You Find My Body." And so there's now been a book that the family has worked with a biographer to release. But the interesting thing is that she was actually alive for 26 days after the search had been called. Ooh. So at some point in there, that's when you have to use some skills and try to self-rescue. I think they said that she was about a 30-minute walk from a road in any direction. So had she just taken off in a direction, there might have been a better chance. But she was in very rough terrain, and she was under canopy. So again, having those skills, being able to light a fire to help get you started. They didn't have signs that she had a long-term fire. But lighting a fire, putting fresh greens on it if you hear helicopters so that you're making smoke, things like that are really key. And then after a while, I mean, a lot of times searches do get called. After a week, 10 days, somewhere around there tends to be when searches are called. For children, they do tend to continue a little bit longer, but there becomes a point of endangering your resources and how much effort, and maybe something else happened that we can't figure out. And so
there's a lot of times like that, what she's referring to, there's a lot of search calls and call outs where somebody might be missing, but in fact, it's just kind of a ruse to cover up a homicide or something different. And so at some point they have to call it because of these certain cases where it is just a wild goose chase. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in North America, it's like 90 or 95% of all searches are resolved within the first 72 hours.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said that if you left a plan and somebody knows you're missing, from that time they know you're missing, you should be found within 72 hours. If you're 3 days into it and you still haven't heard anything, seen anything, then maybe that's when you consider self-rescue or finding a new location, whatever it is. Now, if you didn't leave a plan, it might take them 2 or 3 days to realize you're missing, then 2 or 3 days to try and find you. And so you're extending your timeline there.
That makes sense. All right, we're going to stop for a minute and do a shout out to Uncommon Bees because they make life good for a lot of us. So yeah, Uncommon Bees for all your bee needs, bee sundries, infused honey, wax type stuff. And if you order anything tonight using the coupon Forking Weeds between now and 9:30 tonight, you get 25% off. Other times when you use the Forking Weed coupon, you get 10% off. So definitely want to check them out. And because we are talking, about being in the outdoors, I got to do a shout out to my favorite outdoor gear, Campcraft Outdoors. So having the right gear when you're out there. And where are you? Okay. And so heavy duty stuff. I'm a big fan of leather and wool and waxed canvas. And so they make gear of that sort that can handle being lost 4 days on the woods because you didn't leave a plan. And then, of course, also the assorted outdoor tools. You'll hear us talk, you always want to have a nice knife and a fire starter and things like that, some good water bottles. So you have the abilities to survive longer than a few hours, because if we go back to the slides, there is, did I put the, okay, yeah. The rule of 3 and just how long you can survive with different things. So, the 3 seconds with a positive mental attitude. That's interesting.
They really wanted to play. It's something we teach in search and rescue. They really wanted to play that if you lose hope, you can,
die.
That's kind of the end. It's not like you're going to die in actually 3 seconds. Like, oh, I give up. But it is intended to really kind of get it in your brain that staying positive and looking for that way out is important. Yeah. But a lot of people kind of struggle to realize that, 3 minutes without air. So that one's pretty important. That one, there's not much else you can do if you don't have air. Right. But the 3 hours with shelter is intended for if you're in extreme elements. 3 days without water. So you can go a little ways without needing water. And then the, 3 weeks without food. Food is the least important.
There we go. Yep. So as much as you'd like to forage, you don't have to forage for several weeks.
But foraging helps with that first one, the positive mental attitude.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's not Nick picking greenbriers.
Hey, greenbriers are awesome.
No, don't like the greenbriers.
Okay. So here's another special important. Family member is lost. What should people do?
Yeah.
So we already discussed, talking with them beforehand. But
we already discussed kind of hitting the things, the safe word and knowing any nicknames. Telling search and rescue that James goes by Jimmy is really important. Things like that, because if you're out yelling for James, he may never answer because he's never called that. So having that kind of idea. And then also favorite things. So one of my favorite search and rescue stories, this is not our own search and rescue story, was they were looking for an autistic child for weeks, or not for weeks, for days. And he wasn't responding. He wasn't coming out, and they knew that he was evading them because he was just scared. And somebody mentioned that he loves the ice cream truck. So they got an ice cream truck and drove it out to the middle of the woods and played the music, and he popped out and went running up to the ice cream truck. Awesome. So sometimes you have to think outside of the box, and it's useful. So we would, as searchers, we would never know that kind of thing if family members didn't tell us. So.
And then one thing in our own discussions privately, you mentioned that sometimes people trying to help make the situation worse. And that's always tricky because, it's a loved one, but.
Definitely. Yeah. The more searchers that show up, just not trained searchers that show up that really want to help and go looking for Jimmy that's out there, tend to just make things worse. You end up with a lot of people that you don't know where are and don't know what they're doing. So you end up making almost potentially more searches.
But even prior to us getting the call, the default is your kid wanders into the woods, they're lost, whatever. And then all the family members, they call the brother and the sister, and they all come out and they look and they get out and they start searching around, and they'll burn a few hours trying to locate the person themselves. And then they'll finally call the police or whatever. Then the police will eventually call us. And by the time we get out there, now familiar scent, so family related, is very similar. And so it makes it a lot harder on the dogs to differentiate between brother, sister, mother, father, whatever it is. Now there's a whole bunch of similar scent out there. So It's sometimes if calling and trying to get them to come back, sooner you call us, the better, essentially.
Yeah, if you think of it, the way the dogs are working, the trailing dogs that are looking for a specific scent to, if you ask them to go searching for, if you were asked to look at where's Waldo on a blank page where it's only Waldo, it's pretty easy, right? Everyone can spot Waldo. But if you're asked to look where's Waldo on a typical Where's Waldo book with pictures and things that look like Waldo all over the place, it's really hard to find Waldo. It's not that it's impossible to find Waldo, but it's definitely difficult. And so the less contamination we have for the trailing dogs, and the sooner we get them out there, the fresher the trail is, the higher the likelihood we have of success.
So it really, don't be afraid to call the cops and report your kid has wandered into the woods. Do it immediately. Yeah.
But also I think goes past kids too, with like the special needs stuff. Like, don't be afraid to come forward and say, like, my child or my parent who's missing has this condition, or this is their normal behavior, because not being forthcoming in that information can really hinder or move the search in another direction. So, I mean, we were at a search a couple years ago where all it took was, we showed up and I asked the right question, and they were like, wow, we didn't even think about that. And it moved the search into another direction. They found her before we even scented the dog.
Oh, wow.
So, although that was one of Havoc's best searches, by the way.
Nice.
But yeah, just the right questions but giving the right information without having to be, going around about way of asking.
Yeah, real quick, one of the things we touched on earlier is how the lost person behavior is different between various mentalities. And one of the most common is the dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's very difficult for families to acknowledge that their parents or their elderlies or whoever it is have that. They don't want to admit it. And they just say, oh no, he's old, he's, maybe getting senile or whatever. But by truly understanding that, doing the research and understanding that's what they have can change the search entirely. If we know going in that they do have dementia, then that could change everything.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there are questions that we can ask to get the information divulged. But it would just be better if you just came forward.
Yeah, if you're looking for someone, don't hide things, I think is the take-home message there. Okay. And then, of course, there's all sorts of different ways to support you all. And these links will be put up from it.
Yeah, I think the best one there is probably Amazon.
The Smile program.
Yeah, through Smile, you can add in and just say that anytime you go to smile.amazon.com, you want to donate to Alpha Search and Recovery. And then anytime you shop through smile.amazon, which is the same as Amazon, it just sends us money. Doesn't cost you anything additional. Amazon just pays us. So it's a way of Amazon giving to nonprofits, which is
cool,
helpful and easy.
Same way with the Kroger card. If you shop at Kroger.
Oh, wow. So I didn't realize Kroger would do that, but okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and they got the organization number there. Okay.
Yep. You have to be in Kroger in Texas will do that. So if your Kroger is outside of the state, it won't help us. But
yeah.
But I do recommend, even if you don't donate to us, signing up for these various things, they're free and at least helps your favorite nonprofit.
You're spending Amazon's money and Kroger, basically.
Yep.
But I think we put Cal Topo in here. That's our one of our we actually use it primarily for mapping. But the cool thing is that you can use it and they have a phone app. Not that phones are always the best thing to use in the woods. You should have a GPS, but it'll at least allow you to pull up the map, print a map. You can set your route, your GPS route, send it back to your Garmin, and plan all that kind of stuff out. All in the website. So.
And also, you can send your planned route to other people. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We had one question about the STOP. What does STOP stand for? So that was
kind
Here.
of a basic, I guess, survival type thing that they teach in FunSAR, and you can find it various different places. But yeah, I hate that the first one is STOP within the acronym STOP. But essentially, it's just calm down, take a breath, think about what's actually happening, observe your situation, what you have available, and then come up with a plan of how you can better your situation, whether that's hunker down and build a shelter, whether that's start signaling, whether that's, you know, get your compass out and navigate back, or whatever it might be. But panic and fear is a big thing that hits people the very first time they're lost. And if you panic and just keep going and going and going, you could very highly likely just be going further and further and further away.
Yeah. Well, because the fear involved that you're lost triggers the whole fight or flight reflex.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing in the fight, so you're going to run, and you're just going to get more and more lost. Okay, let's talk stories here now, because I know you've had some interesting cases. So is there something you'd like to share with the?
Yeah, so on the one that Aaron alluded to earlier, I hadn't even thought about that one as a discussion today, but I think it's kind of a fun story. Without giving any real details, of course, to protect privacy.
Got 10 minutes. Keep it concise. How many stories you want to cover?
But we had a missing elderly, and again, the family wasn't real clear on how much dementia she had. But Aaron asked just the right questions and found out that, you know, here in Houston, she went for a walk every day in the same direction because she was heading to J.J. Watt's house, and that she was J.J. Watt's wife or girlfriend. And so we planned out the search, and we put searchers in the direction she headed before we even started the trailing dog. And this is where sometimes it's disappointing, because when you run a dog for a long time, most of the time the dog doesn't make the find. It's usually other searchers. But yeah, they made the find ahead of us working the dog. And we decided to just run it as a training exercise. We were there. We had this little bit of a trail. And so the fascinating thing on this story is that we gave the dog the scent article, and we started going. And as we're going, Aaron looks up, and one of the buildings that she was heading towards had 2 giant JJ letters on the side of the building. So we figured out why she always headed in that direction.
That way.
She saw the JJ letters. And so just having that, like being able to piece that together, and we told the family that afterwards. We're like, hey, she heads this way because there's a building labeled JJ. So dementia does kind of strange things to your brain, and having that little bit of knowledge at least gives them an idea of if this should happen again, of where she's going and why. So that's fun.
That makes sense, yeah. Do you have time to tell
the impactful things? I think just the power of the dogs. It's kind of, we train them, we practice with them, like we do all sorts of scenarios with them, but there's these times where we get into these extreme circumstances that we're not even sure if it'll work or not. And there's been a few that have just been mind-boggling for us, in the sense that we had no idea that the dogs were that capable. One that comes to mind initially is a U.S. Postal Service. We got called in to look for missing cremains, and Houston's sort facility is the single largest building for the U.S. Postal Service in the U.S. And so it's over 1 million square feet. I think it worked out to something like 43 acres inside this building, and you're talking packages everywhere. They had
moving conveyors.
Yeah, I mean,
Overhead.
millions of things going on, stacked super high, machines. They even had the whole area for damaged mail, which was mostly spoiled food. A guy swear he just like wrapped a pumpkin in saran wrap and put a label on it and shipped an entire pumpkin. And I don't know how he thought he was going to make it, but it exploded. So there's rotten pumpkin, and dogs are working all day through this, like nonstop. We had a bunch of dogs that we called in for it. But looking for cremains that are sealed in a box, that are sealed in a package, then wrapped and then taped in a box. We didn't know what the dogs could hit or not. So we did a test to try and get the dogs calibrated for that. So we built our own little 2 mailboxes, and one had cremains in it and one didn't. And luckily we had cremains as a source that we could train on. So we'd use the 2 boxes and they were able to differentiate between the 2. So we thought, okay, this is possible. Let's give it a try. We went and we searched and we searched and we searched. And it was getting near the end of the day, I think. We had 2 different dogs indicate on an empty bin. And we thought it was strange. It was weird. I guess the first dog indicated, so we brought a second dog in, and we're like, maybe they're just getting tired and exhausted and whatever. But every time we'd work them, we'd come back out and we'd hit our little sample box that we built. Turns out when we went to run the second dog there, the second dog indicated, and a lady comes out of the room and asked what we were doing. And she said, oh yeah, there were cremains in there yesterday. So the fact that not only were we not sure if they could hit the actual package, and we trained them and tested that, but the fact that they found where cremains were the day prior and they just detected the residual that was still left there blew our minds, like absolutely boggled us. So it was really neat to see that.
That is astounding. So like, how often do y'all get called out, like per month or per year or something like that, would you say?
So prior to COVID, we were averaging about 2 call outs a month. COVID last year, our 2020 was very slow. We only had, I think, 3 actual larger searches that we went on. But that's very atypical. It's normally about twice a month.
And it seems to go on the when it rains it pours mentality, that we'll go 6-month dry spell and then all of a sudden we'll get 7 calls back to back. That's
how 2021 has started. Is we had the first call out, and then less than a week later, another call out. So.
Okay. And then a person is asking, what breed are the dogs? We talked about this earlier, but if you just want to mention again that, yeah.
So I think the way I like to look at it is the breed doesn't matter as much as the drive and the nerve strength and the things we touched on earlier. And there's ways that you can test that and whatnot. But the reason that you see certain breeds more often than others is because those are some working line dogs. So when you get a Labrador Retriever, there are working line labs that are trained for hunting and actual duck retrieving and all that. They're trained to work. And then there's couch labs that are just bred to be a pretty stay-at-home barrel of a dog and couch potato. So you can get specific breeds that have working lines like generation after generation after generation. And that's why you tend to see some of these purebreds, Labradors and German Shepherds and Malinois and
Goldens
and all that. What's that?
Golden
Retrievers, yeah. A lot of people using Border Collies. But these dogs that are physically bred to work with humans, and that's why you're more likely to find that drive that you can work with and the nerve strength to work and all of that is because it's been bred into them. So when you just go to the pound and you get a dog, it's iffy what you're going to get without knowing ahead of time. So that's why you see certain breeds more often.
Okay. Here's another good
Not
question.
that the shelter dogs wouldn't make good search dogs.
Right. Yeah.
Don't
a lot of ours
yeah.
are shelter dogs still,
Yeah.
but you still need to know what you're looking for going
Yeah,
into.
exactly.
Okay. Cinnamon is asking, is there a season that people are lost the most? So you think like hunting season or...
It varies across the U.S., but for us here in Houston, it tends to be the nice weather. So it tends to be actually the shoulder seasons, spring and fall, when it's not too hot or too cold, tend to be our highest for general missing people. Now, we also do work a lot of despondents, a lot of suicides and homicides, and those tend to be year-round. I can't think of any reason that there's a set time frame for those.
Yeah. Maybe around
Cool,
Christmas time, they say that a lot of people will, it'll put them over the edge. And then Anna, to respond to yours, there were pictures earlier in the show, and you can see the repeat over on the YouTube channel. So I'll be putting links of that up. Let's see what else.
And our website also has a whole bunch of pictures. There's an entire gallery on there.
Yeah. Yep. And it's interesting. And I'm just going to bring it up here again. Let's see. Let me do that. Okay. Back to the very beginning. I can go. There we go. I mean, a lot of young people there. I gotta say, when I think about search and rescue, I'm kind of thinking more of this guy on the end here.
Don't pick on mine.
Age bias on my part. but I
Well,
guess
and I think part of it, like once you hit retirement age, you have a lot more time to dedicate to something, and so that's you see that some around the country, and it seems like people get into it at a young age, and then they kind of hit a busy
Childbearing.
life, childbearing. I don't know, some period in the middle, and then you'll find that people will come back after a long stint of separation. But we're trying to stick it out.
yeah. There are a lot of hobbies that do that, where you're into it, and then you got kids, and then 20 years later you can pick it up again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me throw out 2 more sponsors here. So, of course, I got to do herbs. So, for more you-specific sort of stuff, things that Medicine Man doesn't have a product for yet, you can talk to the people at Herbs, and they will actually design an herbal remedy for you. And then, again, because we are talking survival equipment, Fear and Dread over in Vidor. They also have an online. They have all sorts of really great survival thing. We got your compass, first aid kit, especially here in Texas, the tick remover if you're out tromping in the woods, bowls, and the ultimate survival technology type thing. So a lot of good stuff there. Check them out. And if you use the coupon TRIBE, you get a discount with them. Okay, so whoops. There we go. Back to us. All right, it's 9 o'clock, but I want at least one more story of search and rescue. So what do you got? Something
You got a favorite? I know we've talked some of these before.
I want a new one. Give me, it's like you mainly do stuff in Houston. You talk about the dementia type thing, but how about a lost kid in Houston or something like that? Or,
Tell them about that.
Mariah mentioned that
you had a strange,
It's
what's the worst weather you've had to be out in to do this? How about that one?
Worst weather is usually torrential downpours.
I was going to say the 100 degrees and humid.
That's true too.
We've had searches where we start dropping like flies when we get out there after an hour or two, like as young and fit as we like to think we are. At some point, your body just overheats and you can't keep up.
That is true.
So I'm assuming that actually with the rain, how badly does that affect the dog's ability to find and maintain their scent trail?
So a little bit of water isn't bad. It actually holds scent closer to the ground as far as we understand it. And so the dogs actually do well in light rain, but torrential downpours seem like the scent just seems to wash away. So then we have less likelihood, less good results with our trailing dogs.
Okay.
So there's a fine line.
Okay. Why don't you talk about the Galveston Beach project? And about because that's a really good one. I think a lot of parents could benefit from hearing that too. So why don't we finish with that one?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's a fun one. We've been working with the Galveston PD. They threw out this idea to see if the dogs were capable of, and so we've so far just done some testing, and then kind of COVID happened, and we haven't completed any further testing. But the idea is that children go into the water, swimming and just having fun, and the tide just slowly drifts them down shore. And so when this happens, the children are fine and they pop out and they look around and they don't see their parents and they just start wandering. And a lot of times they just wander in the direction they thought their parents were in, not realizing that the beach moved them down and that all the buildings and all the people, everything looks the same. And so in Galveston, they've had kids that went searching for their parents and then found an arcade and just went and played at the arcade. And meanwhile, there's like panicked parents and, they mount a large search effort and they're perfectly fine. So Galveston PD contacted us with this idea of seeing if the dogs could cast down the beach, right? The children are in the water, but if they could take that trail into the water and then cast and see if the dogs could pick up where the kids popped out of the water.
Okay.
And so we did this
in the wind direction.
In the direction of the tide. So we would have to have somebody that knows the direction that the tide would have taken the children. And so we did this in testing. We had an empty beach. It was really fun to just be out there with beach patrol and law enforcement and us. And one of the law enforcement officers had her own son go out, and he went out swimming, and then they loaded him up on a paddleboard. And they paddleboarded him down further, and then they popped out and went and hid. So we set it up, and we ran the dog, and the dog, said, "Oh yeah, there's a trail that goes to the water, and then I can't follow it once it goes into the water." And then we said, "Okay, good boy. Now let's go see if we can find where the trail." And so we casted down the beach, and it was a good ways. I don't remember how far, but it was like a quarter of a mile. And so we're casting, and the dog's like, "I don't have anything. I got nothing." And we just keep casting, and then all of a sudden there's this head turn and body language, and the dog takes off running. And all of the law enforcement that was following was like, "Oh my gosh, he's got something." And as he's going, he goes and he hits, and the paddleboard was sitting, they didn't drag the paddleboard all the way. And so he hits on the paddleboard and is like, "This is it." And he sits. And I'm like, okay.
Which is his indication that he found the person.
So it was him telling me there's a lot of scent on this paddleboard. And I'm like, okay, good boy, but where is he? And he hit the rest of the trail and went, and we found the officer's boy hiding on the other side of the dunes, completely out of sight. And so proof of concept on an empty beach and under certain circumstances was that it could be an effective tool.
Cool. That had to win you some brownie points with the police officers too.
Yeah, it was such a fun day and experiment. And yeah, had we thought about it, we actually have a video of the footage. We shot it with the drone. We had the drone following the dog team so that we could actually see how it all kind of panned out, since we weren't exactly sure whether it was going to work or not.
Cool. All right. So I want to remind people that your services, the Alpha Search and Recovery, is free of charge. There's never a bill given to the family of the missing person. But it's also, as a 501c, you are a volunteer nonprofit organization. So there are certain ways that people can help you, and I will post those links again. But otherwise, thank you. Always a fascinating thing. For those of us who spend a lot of time in the woods and, foraging, that's a great place to do it, within limits. Sam Houston going after the mushrooms. The best mushrooms are off the trail. So it's good to see, again, telling people where you're going to be, exact map locations if possible, and when they should call for you guys if you don't return. So, and
that is one of the common things that we can touch on here. Sometimes families will call us directly, and we can't deploy like that. And the way Texas works, it has to be through law enforcement, because we don't want to get out there and cause more harm than good. So we let law enforcement deal with the initial interaction, decide if they want to call us out or not. And so anytime you have somebody missing, you can contact us and give us a heads up that law enforcement may be in touch with us, but it's all done through law enforcement. If they want our help, they'll call us out. Okay, that's a good bit of information. I did not realize that. So yeah, it's always heartbreaking for us to try and talk to families and be like, sorry. Yeah. if they don't allow us to go out there, then it's essentially interfering with potential investigation. So and just to keep going a few more, I'm sure there are certain police officers that think, I can handle this, I don't need their help. So yeah, it varies wildly between departments as to whether they trust our service and they call us in early, or whether we are the last ditch effort just to show that they tried everything. And so Texas is kind of the Wild West as far as search and rescue goes. So we really pride ourselves in keeping all of our people trained and certified and up as high as possible on maintaining skills and field readiness. So
we call ourselves professional volunteers.
Yeah. That's a good term. That's a good term. And every win you make, it raises your status. So, they're more likely to call you sooner. Mm-hmm. Okay. That actually leads to one more question then. Can the family, I guess they can request the cops call you in, but again, it's up to the law enforcement.
Normally if the family calls, I'll just say, here's our contact information, have whoever's in charge of the case call us and we'll talk to them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes. Search and rescue in Texas is a little bit of a free for all. Out west, search and rescue is almost entirely organized by the sheriff's office, and search and rescue teams are attached to the sheriff's office. Here, it's not quite that organized, and so we get called by local PDs as well as sheriffs, and so they don't necessarily know we exist.
Yeah, it almost sounds like here, Houston tow truck operators. Awesome. Okay, well, we've gone a bit long now, but that's okay. Thank you so much for sharing this information with people. Again, the goal of Merriwether's World is to help people understand their world and how to live in it. So the things you bring to the table are most excellent, and especially like you mentioned earlier, the STEM outreach and all that sort of stuff. Very, very, very cool. But most of all is just finding lost people. So all right, at this point, I guess it is time to free everyone up and they can do what they want. So thank you all for spending, the hour and 10 minutes with us. And then I will see you at the donut shop tomorrow. Same place.
Same cup of coffee.
Yeah,
Better not
7:25.
get the same cup of coffee. Gross.
Same big old mug. Yeah. All right. And ending broadcast now.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Mark.
Bye.